Alright, back again, Luke here. And as you can see in front of you, this is that mock-up gun that I had made originally to try and see if I could figure out the problem with my Beastbusters arcade board. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to correct the problem with that board. However, I was able to take this this gun that I had made up and use it for another board that I had been wanting to try and get running. And that is my Biohazard Gun Survivor 2 game. And it's a little bit different as far as the setup goes, and once again, you know, it's still in just kind of like the testing kind of crude form here, so that's why you see, you know, the button kind of taped up here and everything is just kind of still bare bones, but eventually it will get kind of patched up. It'll look a little bit better here. What I've done is I put a micro switch under here for the trigger. This here is for the push button or for the gun button. What I've done is I've essentially taken this gun here and I'm going to use it for my Gun Survivor game. Now there's going to be a few differences between this setup and the Gun Survivor in the fact that the Gun Survivor actually uses 3 potentiometers. It uses one for roll, it uses one for yaw, and the other one is for pitch. So these 3 potentiometers are kind of uncommon. You don't see a lot of these in games, especially arcade games nowadays, but what that means is with the different positions, like I said, there's pitch, roll, and yaw. That means the strafing, left and right, this whole platform is going to have to move left and right. Then normally what the original gun setup was is it moved forward and backwards as well. The whole platform did, and then the gun turned left and right. So what I've done here is, unfortunately, this isn't going to be exactly the same. This is going to be your move backward and forward versus, you know, pushing this thing forward and moving it back. The turning left and right is still going to be the same. And the next thing I'm going to have to do is make up the strafing left and right. And what that entails here is what I'm going to do is get some studs here, some kind of like metal studs, and I'm going to put those in the ends here on both sides, and then using some bearings from an RC car, I'm going to put a couple of bearings on this side and on that side, and I'll use a curtain rod, I'm thinking, where I can just set the bearings inside it, and this thing will just roll on the curtain rod track. From there, I'll put one of the potentiometers on the back, probably here, and it'll have to have like a plastic arm, and that plastic arm, when this thing moves left and right, it's going to twist the potentiometer so the potentiometer knows which direction it's going. And then maybe get some springs here to try and keep it centered. It's probably the most challenging part of this this setup here, and luckily, since I do have this here, it makes things a lot easier. To try and make this thing go forward and backwards, left and right, it's a lot of work, but at least this thing has 2 of the 3 potentiometers already set up, so all I have to do is get that last one set up. So what I'm going to have to do here is go down to the hardware store and pick up some parts, and yeah, and once I get those parts, I'll come back and we'll start the build on this. We'll see if we can get this thing to work kind of the way I have it planned in my mind. So we're gonna jump on that, and I'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so as you can see here, I am in a hardware store at the moment, and I'm using my iPhone. And the reason why I'm down here is because I'm looking for some track that I can use for that Biohazard gun. And I seem to have found it. Here we have some plastic railing here that's used for curtain rods, and I'm going to use this. And so the gun will sit across this one, and it'll go left and right across this, and should work out pretty well. I decided to go with plastic because metal seems to be a little bit more difficult to cut down, and plus the fact that a lot of this stuff is quite expensive. Like even for this small piece of curtain rod here, this thing goes for $7, so it's a little bit expensive to get this thing going, but I mean, it's creativity. It's a lot of fun trying to hunt down and see what sort of stuff we can find, and it's a lot cheaper than the $600 or so that the original gun cost, so I think I'll be able to manage stuff here and work things out. But that's where we're at right now, and I'm going to go and try and find some pieces of wood that I can get to build the outside of the casing, and I also need to find something similar to maybe like this for an arm that I can use for the pot, but I'll check around and see what other stuff I can find first, and then we'll come back to that. But yeah, that's all for the hardware store here. Sorry guys, I would love to show you more of the hardware store, but it's a little bit awkward and creepy walking around the hardware store with the cell phone. So I'll be back in a bit. Alright, so as you can see here, we're around the spring section, and what we're going to do is pick up a couple of springs here, and the springs are going to be used to try and center the gun mechanism, keep it in a neutral position here, kind of spring it back into place, pardon the pun. So it's a little bit expensive, but I think we'll grab maybe a couple of these, and we'll go on with that. I think that'll work out. See. Yeah, these are where I bought those replacement things here. Let's see, $5 for some replacement parts. A little bit expensive, but I'll get a couple of these and then we'll go on from there. So be back in a bit. Alright, so after the trip to the hardware store here, I've got my curtain pole, which I'm going to use, and like I had mentioned in the video, I'm going to use this thing here to run this as a track, so it'll run along this. I'll just have to chop this in a couple of different points and then mount this to the board. And it's going to be a little bit tricky because I'm going to have to make two L shapes. So I'll make one L shape here. This will be one side and, well, one side in the front. Then I'll make another L shape one, which will be the other side and the back. And the reason for this is because when I put the bearings on here, they're going to slide into this. So if I have everything built together around it, it's going to be a little bit tricky. But if I have the two L shapes, I can slide the one L shape in, and then I can bolt it from the outside, and that should work out really well. So hopefully in theory this should work kind of smooth and it shouldn't have too much trouble. So we're going to try and give it a go here and see what happens. So I'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so as you can see here, I've got the walls built up, and this is going to be the foundation here where everything can sit. I'll have the rails on each side here, and then that'll allow the gun mechanism to move back and forth. Now, with this particular setup, this is made from pine, and unfortunately, that's all the hardware store had when I went down there. All they had were just pine boards. So the good point about pine is that it's very, very light. It's, you know, it doesn't weigh a lot. So it makes, you know, being able to transport this stuff around a lot easier. The bad point about pine is that it's very soft, and what'll happen is sometimes if you don't pre-drill holes or have any pilot holes and you start to put screws in, you'll just split the wood right in half. So that's something that I'm just really being precautious of here when I go to build this. Really want to make sure that I have everything all lined up before I start putting the screws in, and putting some glue here on each one of these corners. Like I said, these are just two L brackets. These will go together like this. And the main reason for that is when I put my track on here, I'll have the track on this side and the other side. When I go to put the gun in the middle, then I'll have to line it up. So the one part of the gun will slide in here, the other part will slide in, then we'll close this up here, and that'll be the end of that. Here is the gun setup. So just to give you guys a little bit of an idea, if I can do this kind of with one hand, this is how it's going to sit in here, and there's a little bit of a gap on the front and the back, but that's okay. I'll wind up clearing that up, but as you can see here, the movement from, well, with the cable it's going to be a little difficult, but the movement here left and right, it's going to move like this, back and forth. So once I get everything hooked up, then it'll be able to go like this, back and forth. Then I'll have my up and down, and then I'll be able to rotate it. So next step here is trying to get the rails in there, find out how much clearance or how much distance I have left after I get the rails in, and then it'll tell me how many or what size shims I have to use in order to make up the distance here before I put the bearings on. So I'll get on that, and I'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so as you can see here, I've got the railings on both sides, and you can see there's not a lot of clearance. This is going to go in there quite nicely. In fact, I think all I'll have to do is put maybe just a very small shim on the inside there, just to allow the bearing to go on the inside of this curtain track, and then that should be it. To give you an idea here of what I'm talking about with the bearings, if I can find them, I just had them. Here are the RC bearings that I'll be using, and the way this will work is these will just pop into the ends here. Let's see if I can do this, kind of show you guys. They will just slide into the end here, like so. Obviously this thing's on its end, so it's not gonna, these things aren't gonna go in until I tilt this thing up. But as you can see here, so it rolls along quite nicely, and with 2 of those in place, so that will that'll work out quite nicely, I think. And it should allow it to move side to side. Then mounting the other potentiometer will be a little bit tricky, but it should be okay. So nonetheless, so far so good. We're coming along quite well. Just need to find a couple of spacers here so that these things stick out enough to where they stick inside here, but they give a little bit of space so the wood doesn't rub against the plastic pole here. So yeah, that'll be the next step. So we'll go and try and see if we can find some parts to get that done. I'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so as I was going through my parts here, I managed to come across this. This is just like a regular aluminum tube, but fortunately I think this might work out quite well. It doesn't go all the way through the bearing here, but it doesn't really have to, because the center bearing, even if that's locked up, the outer bearing will roll, which is perfectly fine. So that might actually do it. What I'm going to have to do here is cut. The difficult part will be cutting exact sections here. I'll need 4 of them, so that way when I go to put this thing in, like so, this thing will be able to stick out the exact same length for each one of the 4 posts. So that will be the tricky part, but we'll give it a go nonetheless and see what we can do. So next up we'll do that. Be back in a bit. Okay, so what I've done so far is I've cut these down here. I'm still in the process of kind of filing them smooth. Took that post here and just cut different sections off of it. Obviously, a couple of these aren't straight, so I'm going to have to file them down a little bit more to get them all flat. And I've also drilled out the insides here to make it a little bit easier, but there is about, I don't know, about a 1/4 of an inch or so, maybe it's about 1/2 an inch right there, that will create the space between these. And then I'll just put a screw in through the center here, and that should hold it in place while keeping the space, and the bearing itself will still spin. So it's almost there. It's almost ready to go. So I'm going to try and get on that and see what I can do about affixing that to the top part there, and then we'll slide it all together and see if it works. So be back in a little bit. Alright, so as you can see here, we've got the box built. I have the rails on here. I also have the shims down there in the bottom. And I put some grease in here, and as you can see, this thing moves back and forth quite easily. It's not too bad. I have a hole cut out in the front there. That's so I can run the wires to the other PCB, the I/O board. But as of right now, this seems to be pretty good, and this should work out pretty well. We'll have to test it and see how it works like in action, but you know, as far as the way it is right now, it seems to work out okay. Next thing we're gonna have to do is put an arm on the bottom here, and we're gonna have to mount the last potentiometer somewhere around here, so when it moves back like this, back and forth, it changes the position of that potentiometer like this, and then like well, let's see, well, got stuck like this, and then like this. So, but we'll get on that and we'll give it a shot and see how that works. But so far, this top part here, it's all set up, so we'll get on that and give it a go. Be back in a bit. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to have to do here in order to get this next potentiometer mounted in there is we're going to have to do the same thing we did with the other ones, and that is we're going to have to drill out this hole, because as you can see here, this just does not fit. So that's the same thing that we had to do with the other ones as well, just to get this so it'll go around this outer ring here. So we're going to have to drill that out, and it'll take a little while, but we'll get that all cleaned out there and widened out a little bit, and then we'll be able to put this in there, and that should be able to do it. So I'm going to get on that, and I'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so as you can see here, we've got our hole drilled out, and I've also had to put a little bit of a pilot hole here because this has a little stand on it that keeps it from moving left and right. So we got that there. That's all ready to go. Just have to mount that in place. And I also took one of these T-brackets, and what I did is I bent this one up. And the way this is going to work is this is going to fit there in the bottom. It's going to attach to this wall. And this is another piece. I don't know if I'll use this or not, but this is from an RC car as well. And we're going to need an arm here. And the way this arm is going to work is it's going to attach one side here, and then the other side is going to attach to the potentiometer, and when it goes like this, this will swing left. When it goes like this will swing right, and this will turn the potentiometer. So that's what we're working on next. So I'm going to get on that, try and mount everything in place, and we'll be back in a little bit. Alright, so as you can see here, I've got everything kind of put back together, and for the most part, it's ready to go. On the bottom here with the one potentiometer that I put in there, I'm going to probably have to make another arm for it. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of parts here right now. But as you can see down here in the bottom, this is the potentiometer here. This is the arm that I have for it, so it slides up and down, kind of like you know, like a piston, and that will allow you to kind of move back and forth there. Unfortunately, at this time, that the pole that I had made for this thing is actually a little bit too short, and so I can't get a really extreme left and right on this game at the moment. So it's working, but it's not working like 100% here. Like as an example, I can show you guys. You can see like she's strafing left there. When I go to strafe right, I'm just getting hit here, so can't do that. But yeah, the strafing, it works, but it's just a little bit too slow here. Let's see. Let's see. Can't do this with one hand at all. So, just to show you again here, so here's forward, here's backwards, here's left and right. Well, let me see if I can turn it right. There we go. And then the strafing here, let's see, there's center, there's strafing to the left, and strafing to the right is a little bit slower here. So I just have to get a longer piece of metal there for that one part, and it should be alright. But for the most part here, this thing is working, and I'll be trying to put up some gameplay here on this game as soon as I get a chance. But just want to share this with you guys. As of right now, it's all kind of put back together for the most part, and it's just going to need a little bit of a makeover and some fine-tuning. But yeah, that's about all for me for right now. Like always, I'll put up another video here soon, so thanks for watching.